I've told you guys that usually around that July 4th holiday weekend, that's usually when these things actually bottom, about the week or so following that event. So could you see something like that develop over the next sort of 2 or 3 weeks? Sure, absolutely. Something like this would not surprise me one bit. There's that Galaxy chart that I was telling you about. I do like the idea of buying some Galaxy down against the lows here. I suppose, is that 100%? Let's go there. And look at that. I still have his tattoo on here. That's funny. There's that tattoo image. I mean, as I had said earlier, if Terra is actually going to get its act together and relist and all that kind of fun stuff, this might actually turn into one hell of a bot setup. This is an there we go. That's the chart you really want to see. So, if anything, this chart is everything that we talked to you guys about. Want to try and force yourself to buy against lows. You want a dollar cost average your way in. This was the first sort of initial nibble, but you can see the big W is trying to come in here now. I think I still have another stink bid working down below, but I'll have to check my brokerage account to see what's happened there. And if anything, frankly speaking, I see no reason whatsoever why this stock can't go up and fill in this gap into the next cycle. And of course, look at all these gaps all in here. They all need to be filled in. But I wouldn't be surprised if, especially if that damn Terra and all that crap, they just refloat it and start again. I wouldn't be surprised if this thing's at new highs through the end of this next cycle. There's HUT. This guy survived the culling. Of course, huge gaps to the upsides. Is that, I think, if anything, I like the Galaxy bottom a little bit better than that bottom, but nonetheless, you can see it's doing its thing. There's sort of the interesting meme names, Mara and Riot, you can see they're slowly turning the corner. In fact, what might be interesting, Eddie, you're on the call with us, is to overlay an Amazon chart from your 2000.com bubble peak with these names and see how correlated they are. Because that looks a hell of a lot like that Amazon chart and the ultimate bottom. So, if you, like I had sort of said to Stuart, if you don't want to get wrapped up in the timing of your purchases, you just want to force yourself to come in and buy against the bottom end of range, at or below reload zones, blah, blah, blah. If you can, sneak in on names that actually have double bottoms with the moving averages crossing, really, I don't have a problem people just going in and dollar cost averaging away. It might be a little bit early. I think we still have to wait for the Fed to actually officially say they are done raising interest rates. Maybe we even get to the point where they're actually talking about cutting rates. But I would imagine that the little ones, they will rally to new highs. And of course, when they rally to new highs, that's probably the end of this coming bull market. Specifically with regard to Bitcoin, it's probably going to be somewhat the same thing. So here's my list of the names I've been accumulating. And I will just keep accumulating. I haven't gotten in on this guy because he's a little bit expensive still. The only problem with this kind of guy is that he might turn into like a bullish bot and just have another leg higher. You never know. But what I want to see, obviously, are W's. See a lot of V bottoms here because of that sort of recent dump. But, some of them have some pretty good floors. Cute little W bottom came in, basically at reload zones on that GMX. Looks pretty good. There's another bottom that came in through that dump. This H bar is pretty popular. There's another double bottom. You could probably even do things like reload zones here and see that we're coming down into those reload zones. Yeah, so there's 78.6, Brian's favorite fib, and notice the double bottom is just above that level. So just below, actually. So you can see them coming. And then, the final sort of icing on the cake for all this is I've told you guys that usually around that July 4th holiday weekend, that's usually when these things actually bottom, about the week or so following that event. So could you see something like that develop over the next sort of 2 or 3 weeks? Sure, absolutely. Something like this would not surprise me one bit. And if anything, hearing that kind of nonsense out of the ECB, that is absolute perfect anecdote. We talked, of course, about options and what's going on here into this big June 30th options expiry event in Bitcoin in particular. And I think this is a pretty good tell. You can see pretty much exactly where they want to take this thing out, somewhere in this neighborhood. Substantially higher than this levels, I doubt it. And then more importantly, do they really want to make sure that these options expire worthless? I think so. I think it would be in their best interest to have this thing above $17 into Friday. And right now we're sitting 17 and a quarter. So not really a huge difference. Somebody said, did you take a look at coin? I don't know whether I did or not here. I don't think I did. I just quickly brushed over some of these names. I mean, you look at that chart. That to me looks like it's trying to bottom. Of course, you can see I have been accumulating. I bought a little bit off of this bottom, but I also said that I was going to be averaging our way in. I did buy a bit more down here. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it's interesting. That's like a 90% correction off of its high. So if Coinbase is still going to survive, then I wouldn't be surprised actually if this thing holds in. And what I did find interesting about all this was Mr. Gensler, of course, came out and sort of shit on everybody, and it really just didn't have that much traction, did it? I get the impression that Mr. Gensler's kind of shot his wad with the public. I don't think the public, I think they sort of see the political motivations of him. So I think he's lost a lot of credibility in the public's eyes. But anyway, we'll see what happens. Getting some pretty big percentage moves here. If anything, I'm almost a little concerned that maybe this is a little too far, too fast here. That's the weekly chart, but I suppose if we look at like the daily chart, you can see what I mean. So they have left a gap here today. There's also another gap here. You could probably actually also think of this as gap theory. So we could probably go from here to here, and then that implies that your blow off top is somewhere up in that area. That would kind of make sense because there's this big unfinished business gap all the way up here. So if we saw one more gap happen up here somewhere, then that's probably your indication that whatever this short-term rally is, it's nearing done. So gap theory goes, this is what's called the breakaway gap. This is what's called the measuring gap. And then this would ultimately be like the exhaustion gap. Let's say we did maybe a candle like that, and we have a little bit of a hole right in there. And so breakaway gap, measuring gap, exhaustion gap. The way that you do that is you measure the distance from the breakaway gap to the measuring gap and then apply that higher. And if you see that final third gap into that level, then you know that we're probably near done that rally.